Okay, friends, I'll see if I can run through this pretty quickly. So this is going to be about minerals, vitamins, and then of course the issues associated with you don't get enough of them. You had gotten a quick list earlier of a few minerals, which are basically elements. First one being iron, needed primarily for our context for hemoglobin in your red blood cells to help transport oxygen. They form this oxyhemoglobin complex. Calcium, the wonder ion. It's used not just for your bones, but also is involved in your blood clotting. It's also involved in every time your muscles contract, in addition to all your nerve firing. So that's critically important. Iodine, as we now know, is only used for one place in your body. That's in your thyroid to produce a hormone called thyroxine. And sodium potassium are one of many electrolytes you have in your body. We could pick some other ones too, but these are critically important ones. And sodium potassium actually also help with nerve impulse and transmissions too, proper function in your body. And phosphorus, last one. I mean, we talk about ATP, adenosine triphosphate, for respiration kind of thing. We also talk about calcium phosphate along with the calcium for the bones. So lots of things going on there. And today we started the vitamins. And you may recall that some vitamins are fat soluble, some are water soluble, but we'll go through those. And then lastly, I'll run through quickly some of the issues that can happen if you don't get enough of these minerals, vitamins, in the case of kwashiorkor and obesity, too much of one type or not enough of a certain type of nutrient. So let's just start with the big deal with vitamins. So vitamins, as I mentioned, act as coenzymes. One of the most important things that proteins do, but there's many things, is they act as enzymes, which they control all of the reactions that go on in your body. So most every biological reaction in your body, and there's hundreds of thousands of them, go quicker and very specifically at certain times because of enzymes. And vitamins help that process along. That's why they're called coenzymes or co-workers. ADEK, get too much of that, they can get stored in your fatty areas of your body, in your liver, and they can actually build up in toxic levels. Next time you look at a vitamin A pill, just kind of break it open, put it in water. You'll notice it will kind of like oil and water, because it's kind of a lipidy kind of thing. It just doesn't mix with water. And then the two water-soluble ones that we'll be talking about are vitamin C and most of the B vitamins. So we're only going to be doing one of the B vitamins. So as I said in class, you can take all this you want, you just pee it right off. So let's start with vitamin A, sometimes called beta carotene. You always hear about carrots being good for your eyes. Well, there's some science behind that, which has to do with the fact that the vitamin A that you find in the carrots actually helps in the production of some of the pigments that are used in the retina of your eye for color and vision and things. And it's also helpful for proper functioning immune system and keeping the skin healthy. Vitamin B1, one of many vitamins in the B complex, also called thiamine, is required for cellular respiration. Remember, cellular respiration is a process where you break down food, whether it be carbos or maybe proteins or even fats, and you get energy the cell can use. And that form of that energy is usually going to be an ATP. And phosphates also, forget that. So, and ATP, so important stuff. Vitamin C is ascorbic acid. Eat a lot of good citrus and you get lots of good vitamin C. It's another water-soluble one. And the thing I'd like you to know about it is it really helps kind of keep your body together by making this protein collagen, or help make the protein collagen. Remember the idea of coenzymes. And so if you have scars and things like that, there's a lot of things holding it together, and vitamin C helps that process. Vitamin C is also important for an antioxidant, which we'll talk about. Vitamin D, the sunshine vitamin, and vitamin D helps the body absorb calcium and also kind of metabolize it and help it, and even to a certain extent phosphorus too. But let's focus on calcium. And as I said before, it's a sunshine vitamin because you can't, this is not an essential vitamin. You can actually make vitamin D, but when the sun is a bit lower in the atmosphere, or I should say in the sky, and during our quote-unquote wintertime, we don't get as much sunshine, and therefore not as much vitamin D. So a lot of people supplement that. And vitamin E. Vitamin E has a lot of purported to do lots of different things, but the one I want you to know about is it's an antioxidant. This idea of an antioxidant is important, and because what antioxidants do is that they kind of tame free radicals. And as I mentioned in class, free radicals are compounds, and this is a pretty technical, semi-technical definition of what free radicals are, but free radicals are compounds in your body that have unpaired electrons, and oftentimes they're ionized. There's ions, unbalanced pairs, electrons, protons, but the thing is that they can actually have an effect on other compounds. And what they will do is if they come flying into, think about if a cannonball comes shooting into some machinery, just busts it up and breaks it. Well, this is essentially the same kind of thing. Free radicals are sometimes called chemical shrapnel, and they come in and they kind of disrupt bondings and pairings of from other compounds. And the one that we're really concerned about is going to be DNA. So if free radicals hit DNA, that can actually cause genetic mutations, which is something we clearly don't want to have happen. And antioxidants, what they can do is they can tame these free radicals. And there's this whole theory of aging that there's over time, there's this buildup of free radicals in your body and the damage is caused by them. And last but not least is vitamin K. And vitamin K is required for your blood to clot. So among other things, but this is the most basic one I want you to know. So now if we look at these concerns and issues in terms of, and this is the list from your objectives, we can go through these. The first one, and I kind of pair them together in a little different order than that list there, but the first one is osteoporosis, or this idea of thinning of your bone mass. And you can see here's a picture of normal healthy bone, a little bit more dense and less dense, and the calcium is kind of being depleted there to the point where, and it's mostly an issue with women, but to the point where your posture, your bones just can't support it, you start sagging, and sometimes there's actually a breakage of the bones because it just can't support that weight anymore. And as I said in class, it's important that especially women when they're in their teens and a bit older, as many of you are, in fact all of you are, that you make sure you get enough calcium in your diet because it's early in your age when you're starting to build up your bone density. And it's something you can't really fix later on. You can maintain it, but you can't increase it. So get a lot of calcium. Rickets kind of goes hand in hand with osteoporosis because it's also an issue with your bones. And the problem here is that you may not be getting enough calcium in your diet and or vitamin D in your diet. And both of those kind of go hand in hand with the absorption of calcium and making the calcium phosphate and basically become bow-legged. And so the mass of your body just can't be supported by your legs and they kind of give out a little bit and bend either in or out. So that's not a good thing. Anemia, as I said in class, when you think of anemia, at least when I think of anemia, I think of vampires because they're very pale, and if you're anemic, you don't really have a lot of blood and essentially red blood cells, and that's really the issue here. And so if you have a really low red blood cell count, as in the case on the right here, it actually says normal, and this is anemic conditions on the right side. The font got a little weird here. This is an issue, and there's many things that can cause anemia, including disease and cancer, but that I want you to focus on is iron. So if you don't get enough iron, you can't produce enough hemoglobin, and therefore you won't have enough red blood cells. So my connection here is going to be with iron poor blood. We mentioned kwashiorkor earlier in the year when we talked about essential amino acids and proteins, and this is definitely a protein deficiency problem. And so if they're eating a lot of rice and cabbage and things that have a lot of carbos but no protein, this is the unfortunate, sad outcome of that. So kwashiorkor. Then we come to iodine, and you can't separate your thyroid and iodine because that's the only things we said earlier in this that iodine is used for in your thyroid. And three things we'll be talking about will be hyper, hypo, and goiter. And here's where the thyroid is located. As I said, it kind of looks like a bow tie, and it would be situated in the same place where a bow tie would be, except a little internal right over your trachea, as you can see here, your windpipe. And larynx, by the way, this is your voice box. So it sits right there. Now, iodine is needed for this hormone, thyroxine. And thyroxine has an important function, which is it controls your metabolic rate. So it's kind of like a gas pedal. So you speed it up, your metabolic rate goes up. Take your foot off the gas, the engine slows down. In this case, it's your engine, your metabolism. In hyper, if someone's hyper, they have too much energy, and that can happen if you're hyperthyroid. But hyper means too much, and the opposite of that source is hypo, too little. And so you can be hyperthyroid, which means you produce too much thyroxine, or you can be hypothyroid, too little thyroxine, just as you can be hyperglycemic and have high, too much sugar levels, or hypoglycemic and have too little sugar levels. And what happens here is if you're hyperthyroid and your metabolism increases, your respiration increases, you're burning your food much faster, you're just faster heart rate, everything's just more carbon dioxide, everything's just speeded up. And hypo, just the opposite. So in fact, people tend to put on a little bit of weight, and even mentally they're a bit slower too. This is a classic example of, this is Marty Feldman, and he was hyperthyroid, and you kind of get the bulging in the eyes, but he made a career out of it, but not very attractive. And so again, here is a normal thyroid. Now here is an enlarged thyroid, and this is called goiter. So it's enlargement of a thyroid. So it says goiter is right here. And it can be caused by lots of different things, but the thing I want you to focus on would be not having enough iodine in your diet. Because you don't get enough iodine, you can't produce enough thyroxine, and you have this kind of feedback mechanism, which your body's saying like, hello, we're not making enough thyroxine, get going there, thyroid. So the thyroid will say, okay, I'm working as hard as I can. Well, work harder. And then the thyroid says, okay, well, I'll make more cells and get bigger. And that's kind of the short story of it. Though goiter can also be caused by other things too. And here's this warning of the awful icky pictures. So here they come. That's definitely goiter, and that's definitely goiter. But we'll go back there. We'll go back to this picture here so you don't have to see it again. But in any case, so that's the goiter. And the sad thing is that this lack of iodine in certain areas can cause mental retardation in children, because having the proper thyroxine levels helps the brain kind of develop. And then that's another thing which I mentioned in class, which you're not responsible for. It's called cretinism. And that's really sad because it's so treatable. We don't have cretinism in the United States because we eat salt all the time on all our food. And not only that, it's iodized salt. We add iodine on purpose to it. Okay, get through those. Scurvy, the one I didn't quite get to today, though we did mention it several times already. Scurvy is caused by a lack of vitamin C. When you think of scurvy, you think of pirates and that type of thing. And that's because traditionally pirates would be on the boats for a long time, would have access to fresh fruit and vegetables, which would have a lot of vitamin C. And so what would happen is that, remember, vitamin C has that connective tissue which holds you together, and their gums would be bleeding, and they start losing teeth. And as I mentioned, if you have like a scar in your hand here, the scar would just kind of start falling apart. And if you want to see some really gross pictures, which I don't think you really want to, you can always go to Google Images and look up scurvy. And hemophilia. Now, hemophilia means that you cannot clot properly. So you get a cut and you start bleeding. And it's not so much the external bleeding like this, but it's internal bleeding. So if you get a bruise on the interior, which is what's happening, it just may keep bleeding. So that's not good. You may recall that there's genetic causes of hemophilia, but we're not talking about that. So now we're talking about maybe two possibilities. Could be you don't get enough calcium, because calcium helps with clotting, and probably more importantly, it's vitamin K, lack of vitamin K. There's no vitamin K. So again, hemophilia, failure of blood to clot, and it's probably because of the, we'll at least stress now because of the diet, calcium, vitamin K. And then we have obesity, I think is the last one. And we did talk about obesity earlier. We talked about nutrients in general. Maybe you could be overnourished, undernourished, and basically you have too many calories. And even though it's not called hypercalories, just throw that in there again. Hyper, too much of something. Well, in this case, it's too many calories. But remember, we use the term overnourished. So I think, let me see here. Yep, that's it. So I'm going to stop it here.